Life doesn't always return with a bang, but with a beep. For Evelyn Reed, it was the steady, rhythmic pulse of a heart monitor that stitched her consciousness back together, one moment at a time. She awoke not to clarity, but to a world of white. White walls, white sheets, the white, sterile uniform of a nurse whose face was a compassionate blur. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic, a smell so clean it felt sharp and unnatural in her lungs. The first face that truly swam into focus, a solid anchor in her sea of confusion, was Ethan's, her husband. The name came to her as a fact, not a feeling. His handsome features, usually so composed, were etched with a profound exhaustion. But his eyes, when they met hers, shone with an overwhelming, desperate relief. He clasped her hand, his touch warm and sure, a stark contrast to the cold dread coiling in her own stomach. Evie. "Oh God, Evie, you're back," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion she couldn't quite place. He told her everything, his words filling the vast, empty spaces in her mind. He spoke of a car accident on a winding coastal highway slick with November rain. He spoke of a 2-week coma, a silent vigil he kept by her side, day and night, waiting for her to return. Evelyn listened, nodding as if she understood. But the words were just data biographical details of a stranger. The woman who had lived that life, the woman who loved this man, was gone. In her place was a hollow echo. Returning to their home was even more disorienting. It was less a house and more a statement piece of architecture, a stunning cage of glass and steel perched on a cliff overlooking the moody, fog-shrouded waters of Puget Sound. The view was breathtakingly beautiful, but the house itself was cold. Its minimalist furniture, its polished concrete floors, its stark white walls, everything was arranged with a precision that left no room for life's messy imperfections. It felt more like a gallery than a home, and she, the new, broken exhibit, Ethan, however, was the very picture of devotion. He was her shadow, her support, her memory. He helped her navigate the spacious rooms, prepared her meals with meticulous attention to her doctor's orders, and laid out her medications each morning. And he began what he called memory therapy. Every evening, after a quiet dinner, they would sit on the plush leather sofa that faced a television the size of a small wall. Ethan would dim the lights, creating an intimate theater for just the two of them. "Let's see where we went last year," he'd say, his voice full of manufactured cheer. The screen would flicker to life with scenes of impossible perfection. There was Evelyn in Paris, laughing breathlessly under the twinkling lights of the Eiffel Tower. There she was on a pristine beach in Hawaii, tanned and carefree, her arms wrapped around Ethan's neck. There she was at a Christmas party, surrounded by smiling friends, raising a glass of champagne. In every clip, she was radiant, adored, the smiling, perfect wife to a handsome, doting husband. "We had some amazing times, didn't we?" Ethan would say, squeezing her hand. Evelyn would force a smile and nod, but inside she felt nothing. She watched the woman on the screen, the stranger who wore her face, and felt a profound and unsettling disconnect. She searched her eyes for a spark of recognition, a flicker of shared emotion, but found only a void. One night, unable to sleep, she rewatched a short clip on her phone. It was from her last birthday party. She looked happy, surrounded by people who were apparently her friends. She paused the video and zoomed in on her own face as she blew out the candles on her cake. The smile was there, perfectly formed, but it was a facade. It didn't reach her eyes. The eyes of the on-screen Evelyn, if you looked closely enough, held a deep, hollow sadness, a resignation that sent a shiver down her spine. A cold dread trickled through her veins, chilling her to the bone. Something was fundamentally wrong. Either the trauma had broken her mind, or the perfect, happy life her husband was so carefully reconstructing for her was the most elaborate lie she had ever known. Asterisk in the days that followed, the gilded cage began to feel smaller, the walls of glass more like prison bars. Ethan's care, once a comfort, now felt like a form of gentle, persistent surveillance. He would answer her phone before she could reach it, murmuring to her friends that she was resting and not quite ready for visitors. He managed her email account, deleting what he deemed stressful and replying on her behalf. The noise from the outside world isn't good for your recovery. Evu, he'd say, his voice a smooth, reasonable balm on her growing panic. Her suspicion, once a vague unease, now became a focused, secret mission. She became a detective in her own life, scrutinizing every detail for cracks in the facade. She found them everywhere. A photograph from a ski trip showed her wearing a silver locket she had no memory of and which was nowhere to be found in her jewelry box. In a video from a summer barbecue, she heard her own voice in the background, but the cadence was slightly off. The pitch a little too high, like a convincing but imperfect impersonation. She tried to voice her concerns, testing the waters of his patience. Ethan, she began one evening, her heart fluttering with anxiety. This video from the beach. I don't remember the water being so blue. He didn't even look up from his laptop. Of course you don't, honey. That's the amnesia. The doctor warned us about this. Confusion, false memories, even paranoia are all part of the healing process. You just need to relax and let the real memories come back. Don't overthink it. Just trust me. Just trust me. The phrase had become his shield, the perfect defense against any question she dared to ask. It was a command disguised as a comfort, and it made her feel utterly powerless. Her chance for a reprieve came on a Tuesday afternoon. Ethan had an emergency meeting in the city, one he couldn't get out of. He hesitated, his brow furrowed with concern, before finally agreeing to leave her alone for a few hours. He made her promise not to leave the house, and he called every 30 minutes, his voice a remote leash. But for Evelyn, it was a taste of freedom so intoxicating it made her dizzy. She needed to escape the sterile silence of the house. She walked to a small, independent bookstore at the end of their street, a place that felt real and lived in. The smell of old paper and coffee was a balm to her frayed nerves. As she ran her fingers over the spines of books, she felt a sliver of her old self return. She was just a woman browsing a bookstore. She was normal. As she turned down a narrow aisle, a man in a dark, hooded jacket brushed past her. It was a slight, almost unnoticeable bump. Excuse me, he muttered, his face obscured by shadows. Before hurrying away, Evelyn thought nothing of it until a few minutes later, she reached into her coat pocket for her phone. Her fingers brushed against a small, folded piece of paper. That hadn't been there before. Her blood ran cold. She darted into the restroom, her hands shaking as she locked the door behind her. She unfolded the note. The handwriting was messy, rushed, and slightly frantic. It was a single, terrifying sentence. What you see isn't what happened. Evelyn braced her hand against the cool tile of the wall, her knees threatening to buckle. She gasped for air, her lungs burning. This was it. This was the proof. She wasn't crazy. Her gut feeling, her intuition, it was all real. And more importantly, someone else out there knew it too. The fear didn't vanish. But now it had a powerful companion, the truth. And she would tear down the walls of this perfect life to find it. Asterisk. Returning home, Evelyn was a changed woman. The fragile patient was gone, replaced by a quiet, determined investigator. She now knew she was living in a meticulously crafted lie, and her husband was its architect. She had to move with extreme caution, hiding her newfound purpose behind a mask of placid recovery. Her first challenge was gaining unrestricted access to her high-powered work computer. She couldn't risk arousing Ethan's suspicion. The perfect opportunity presented itself the next morning over breakfast. "Ethan," she began, her voice carefully casual. "I was thinking. I feel so useless just sitting around. Maybe if I tried to look at some of my old design projects, it might help trigger my memory. Just to feel productive again." Ethan looked up from his tablet, studying her face. For a moment, she thought he saw through her act, but then he smiled, a warm, encouraging smile that didn't reach his eyes. "That's a great idea, Evie. A fantastic idea. Just promise me you won't push yourself too hard." That night, she waited. She listened to the rhythm of the house, the settling groans of the structure, the distant hum of the refrigerator. She waited until the sound of Ethan's steady, deep breathing from the master bedroom assured her he was asleep. Then she slipped into her office and closed the door, her heart hammering against her ribs. The glowing Apple logo on her iMac screen felt like a beacon in the darkness. She was home here, in the world of pixels and timelines and layers. This was a language she understood. She copied the video files Ethan had given her onto a new drive, creating her own secret archive. Then she opened the tools of her trade: Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects. They had been her instruments for creating beautiful illusions for clients. Tonight, they would be her instruments for dismantling them. She started with a clip from a supposed trip to Italy. On the surface, it was perfect. Her laughing on a balcony overlooking a vineyard. She began to deconstruct it, frame by painful frame. She isolated the audio track. The ambient sound of chirping birds and distant conversation was a perfect, seamless loop. It repeated itself every 47 seconds. No real place was ever that perfect. Next, she analyzed the light. The sun was high in the sky, yet the shadows on her face were soft and diffused, as if she were lit in a professional studio. The final damning evidence was in the details. She zoomed in 400%, right to the edge of her jawline, and there it was. A faint shimmering line of pixels, a digital seam where a deepfake algorithm had flawlessly grafted her face onto someone else's body. It was a digital scar, invisible to the naked eye, but screamingly obvious to a professional dot she pushed. Back from the desk, a choke sob escaping her lips. She moved through the other videos, her movements now fast and efficient. The Christmas party, the beach vacation, the birthday celebration, all of them were fakes. All of them bore the same digital scars. It was all a lie. The trips, the parties, the laughter, the love, everything. Her happiness had been manufactured. Her life had been rewritten. And the director, the man who had orchestrated this entire cruel charade, was her own husband. The question was no longer if he was lying. It was what unspeakable truth he was trying to bury. The question why became an obsession, a frantic, pulsing rhythm beneath her every waking thought. The answer, she knew, had to be hidden within Ethan's digital world. He was meticulous, but everyone left a trail. She waited for her moment, a window of opportunity. It came on a Saturday morning when Ethan announced he was going for a long run. As soon as the front door clicked shut, Evelyn sprang into action. She went straight to his office. His laptop was on his desk, sleeping. She tapped the trackpad, and the password screen appeared, a digital gatekeeper to the truth. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She tried his birthday, access denied. Her birthday, access denied. Their anniversary, nothing. Time was a luxury she didn't have. He could be back at any moment. She closed her eyes, trying to think like him. What was important to Ethan? Control. Image. Their perfect life. An idea sparked, a memory from one of the fake videos, a party celebrating the day they bought the house, their dream home. It was a lie, but it was his lie. With trembling hands, she typed in the date. Click. Desktop materialized. She had broken through. She began a frantic search, her heart pounding. She found an external hard drive named simply Archive. It was filled with hundreds of folders, mostly work-related. But one stood out. It had no name, only a string of numbers. The date of the accident. Her breath hitched. She opened it. Inside, there was a single, chillingly named subfolder, dashcam_originals. She plugged in the USB drive she now carried with her everywhere and dragged the folder onto it. The progress bar was an agonizing crawl. A car door slammed outside. He was back. The file transfer completed. She ejected the drive, frantically cleared the computer's history, unlocked the screen, her body thrumming with adrenaline. Seconds. Later, Ethan walked in, flushed and smiling from his run. He didn't notice a thing. That night, sleep was an impossibility. When the house was finally still, she went to her office, locked the door, and plugged in the USB. This was it. The truth. She clicked on the video file. The screen flickered to life, showing the familiar dark interior of their car. The date and time stamp in the corner confirmed it was the night of the accident. The audio crackled, and then she heard her own voice, sharp and laced with anger. "You never listen to me, Ethan. It's always about your work, your reputation. Just shut up, Evelyn." Ethan's voice snarled back, a venomous rasp she had never heard before. "For once in your life, just shut up." The argument was brutal. It was the sound of a marriage disintegrating. The Evelyn in the video was crying, her voice breaking. Ethan was driving far too fast, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his rage a palpable force in the small car, and then it happened. A sickening, heavy thud, not metal on metal, but something softer, duller. The car jolted violently through. The frantic sweep of the windshield wipers, she saw it. A figure thrown into the air like a ragdoll, landing in a crumpled heap on the dark, wet shoulder of the road. There was a moment of pure dead silence in the car. Then Ethan swore, a choked, panicked sound. But the panic lasted only a second. It was replaced by something colder. Calculation. He glanced in the rearview mirror, his jaw set, and then he slammed his foot on the accelerator. The engine roared, and the car sped away into the night, leaving the motionless figure behind. The real memory crashed into Evelyn like a physical blow. The jolt of the impact. The spiderweb crack spreading across the windshield. Her own scream, swallowed by the sound of the engine. And Ethan's terrifying, absolute silence as he made the decision to flee. Shaking uncontrollably, she opened a web browser. Her fingers fumbled on the keys as she typed hit and run accident and the date. The first result was a news article from the Seattle Times. College student Maya Carter killed in hit and run. Police seeking witnesses. And below the headline was a photograph of a young woman with a bright, hopeful smile. Evelyn gagged, stumbling back from the desk as the full, monstrous weight of the truth crushed her. This entire elaborate deception, the gaslighting, the prison of her perfect home, it was all to bury this one unforgivable sin. He hadn't been protecting her. He had been protecting himself. She wasn't a patient in need of care. She was a witness who needed to be silenced. The grief and horror of the revelation slowly hardened into a cold, diamond-hard resolve. The tears stopped. The fear was replaced by a burning, righteous fury. Evelyn Reed was no longer a victim cowering in a cage. She was an instrument of justice. For Maya Carter, her first move was to contact the stranger from the bookstore. Using a new, anonymous email address, she sent a simple message. "I know what you know. I have proof." The reply came within an hour. It was Ben Carter, Maya's younger brother. A brilliant IT student, he had been conducting his own lonely, grief-fueled investigation for months, and had suspected Ethan's car matched witness descriptions. When Evelyn sent him a single, unedited frame from the dashcam video, his suspicions were confirmed. An alliance was forged. Two strangers bound together by a single, terrible truth. They knew they couldn't go to the police directly. Ethan was a wealthy, powerful man with an army of lawyers. He would shred their story, paint Evelyn as an unstable, vengeful wife suffering from post-traumatic delusions. They needed more than proof. They needed a confession. Or the next best thing, a public unveiling so complete, so devastating that no lie could survive it. The plan they devised was risky, but it was their only shot. Evelyn began to play the final act of her performance. She became the loving, grateful wife, her memory fully restored. She told Ethan she wanted to host a small party to thank their closest friends and family for their support during her recovery. A celebration of our new beginning, she called it. Ethan, blinded by his own arrogance and believing his cruel masterpiece was complete, readily agreed. He saw it as victory lap, a final chance to cement the narrative of his unwavering devotion. He had no idea he was helping her set the stage for his own execution on the night of the party. The beautiful glass house buzzed with polite conversation and the clinking of wine glasses. Ethan was in his element, the gracious host, his hand possessively on the small of Evelyn's back. He accepted their friend's praise with a humble smile. Evelyn played her part, smiling, nodding, her stomach churning with a mixture of terror and anticipation. Finally, the moment came. Evelyn stepped before the large TV screen, tapping a wine glass for attention. The room fell silent. "I just want to thank all of you for being here," she began, her voice steady and clear. "And most of all, I want to thank my incredible husband, Ethan. He has been my rock. To show him how much I appreciate everything he's done to help me remember, I've put together a little video of our journey back to happiness." Ethan beamed at her, his face a mask of smug satisfaction. Evelyn pressed play. The screen lit up with the familiar, perfect images. Paris, Hawaii, Christmases past. The guests smiled fondly. Then the screen flickered and the image changed. It was the dark, grainy view from the dashcam. Evelyn's voice filled the silent room, no longer warm, but cold as ice. "Thank you, Ethan, for trying so hard to help me remember, but you left a few things out." The raw audio of their argument filled the space. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Then came the sickening thud of the impact. A collective gasp went through the room. The screen split into two. On the left, a clip from a fake video showed them driving happily on a sunny day. On the right, the horrifying reality of the hit and run played out in unforgiving detail. Ethan's panicked face, his cold decision, and the car speeding away. Into the darkness, the room was frozen in stunned silence. The guests stared, their faces masks of disbelief and dawning horror. Looking from the terrible truth on the screen to the man standing among them, just then, the front door slid open. Ben Carter stood there, his face grim, flanked by two uniformed police officers. Ethan's world, the perfect, fragile world he had built on a foundation of lies, shattered into a million pieces. Months later, Evelyn sat in a quiet, sunlit coffee shop far from the house on the cliff. Across the table, Ben Carter sipped his own coffee. The legal proceedings were over. The truth had won. "He never thought you would remember," Ben said softly. "He never thought I would fight back," Evelyn replied, a newfound strength in her voice. The scars, both visible and invisible, were still there. But they were no longer marks of a victim. They were the marks of a survivor. She looked out the window at the people passing by on the street, each living their own unwritten story. For the first time in a long time, she felt like one of them. The fractured frame of her past had been broken for good, and Evelyn Reed was finally truly ready to paint her own picture.